Hi there, I'm Lisa.
And I'm Denise, and together we're the Outback Sisters.
Ex Sisters.
And
And
we
we're
are
all,
here.
yeah, sorry, go on. Yeah.
We are here today to talk about historical women.
Yeah, good and bad. But today we're doing the not so good. We're doing someone called Ma Barker or Kate Barker, which was her real name. It's just that that was the name she was called during her criminal years and also in movies and all that kind of thing.
And songs and stuff. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And of course everyone definitely would know that there was a song once.
Yeah. I mean, basically all I know about Ma Barker was from the song.
Yeah, me too, actually. I
So,
didn't pay any attention to lyrics and stuff like that. I just liked the tune. It was very disco-y back in the day.
yes,
And yeah,
exactly.
Boney M, I think it was, singing.
It was? Yep.
Boney M?
Yep.
Is that their name? Yeah. Yeah, they were pretty good. So we'll get on to what we found out, like in the real story. And hopefully I haven't doubled up anywhere, but you never know these days as I type things out. I'm not very good.
Yeah, you don't know. That's true.
Okay, so Kate Barker, born Arizona Donnie Clark, October 8th, 1873. So Barker obviously must have been her married name. She died in January 16th, 1935.
Gotta wonder how they got Kate Barker from Arizona Donnie Barker. Like,
yeah.
How do you do Kate from Arizona?
Probably because it was more well-known names. I figure who walked around back in the 30s going, "Hey, Arizona." Nowadays, I reckon you get away with it, but in the old days, I don't know if you could.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, she was better known as Ma Barker, and sometimes known as Arizona Barker or Annie. I think that's Annie. Ari. An abbreviation of the Arizona.
Yeah.
She was the mother of several American criminals who ran the Barker Karpus gang during the Public Enemy era, when the exploits of gangs and criminals in the Midwestern United States gripped the American people and press. It was her and her sons that were the major thing that went on then, which would have been pretty unusual in the 30s, having any women other than Bonnie and Clyde. I haven't ever really heard, but these are things
I guess there would be women, but as in history, mostly it's men that are covered in history, not usually women.
And I wonder how many times it was the woman pulling the strings.
Well, there's another question. I wouldn't know. Yeah. Quite often I'd say it was the man pulling the strings. But I think women can be just as bad as men.
Oh,
so who knows?
Yeah. And when this took place, of course, there was extreme poverty. And these people were living in extreme poverty. So I think the desire to break free, get rid of the traditions, get rid of the law, because that's not working for you.
That's true.
Yeah. So Barker gained reputation as a ruthless crime matriarch who controlled and organised her son's crimes. So she was the one pulling the strings in this case. J. Edgar Hoover described her as the most vicious, dangerous and resourceful criminal brain of the decade. Well, gee, there's a lot of criminals that were around that time, and he still considered her enemy number one, maybe. And Al Capone and all them were running around in that era. Is that right? I think I've got the eras right.
I don't know. I'm not even going to get in that. I'm not sure who was running around at the same time. Maybe that's something we can look up.
Yeah. She was represented as a monstrous mother in films, songs, and literature. Those who knew her insisted that she had no criminal role, and that Hoover created the allegations to justify shooting her, the FBI shooting of her in 1935. Later reports consistently concluded that Kate Barker's role in her son's crimes were falsely created by the media to increase the newspaper and media sales. Does that ring true now?
Yes.
Maybe not in this horrible way, but in many others. Yeah.
These events occurred during an era where the exploits of gangs and criminals gripped the Midwest, the American people and the press. Ma Barker travelled with her sons through most of their criminal careers. After her death, during a shootout with the FBI, she became known as a ruthless matriarch who controlled and organised her sons' crimes, which included robberies, kidnappings, and murder. And those who knew her insisted that it was not true. Claim it was a fabrication. We've just heard that bit, so yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Like I said, I may have doubled up. A bit of a backstory about her, Ari Clark, as they've decided to call her in the bit I read about her, married George Barker in 1892. They had 4 sons between 1893 through to 1901. Herman, Lloyd, Arthur, and Fred. George, her husband, I thought George was another son, but I think, no, that's not right. George, her husband, worked a series of low-skilled jobs and had been described as shiftless, I hope I didn't swear that, shiftless by the FBI documents, and say that Barker paid no attention to their sons' educations, and as a result, they were more or less illiterate. And I reckon that would have been very common around Midwest, very poor areas. Yeah. In the 1920s, gangdom grew in an insidious rate that by the 1930s, it had grown into a nationwide problem, spawning new and more malevolent crimes. Their criminal activity started as early as 1910, when Herman, her eldest son, at 17, and his brothers were involved in multiple crimes over the years. With increasing seriousness and violence, Kate went into a rage when her sons were arrested and was heard saying, "My poor innocent boys," sorry about the dog, everyone, incensed at the indignity he had suffered, so much so that they left Webb County City, Mississippi, for Tulsa, Oklahoma.
In Tulsa, they were barely able to make ends meet. Ma Barker, tired of barely getting by on what her husband earned, wanted the finer things in life, as do we all. She saw her boys as a means to an end, recognising while her son was in prison, he had made good money as a criminal. She encouraged petty theft, bad behaviour, trained them, and planned ahead for them to support her in her future. They operated largely in the southwestern states, ravaging law-abiding citizens, plundering the wealth and leaving a trail of death and destruction in their wake. The boys were inducted into the Central Park Gang, and Herman died in 1927 after a robbery left one policeman dead, shot by him at point-blank range in the mouth. He then killed himself to avoid prosecution.
Well, there you go. I mean, there you have your ultimate, don't you? Especially a life of a cop. He knew what he was going to cop. Even if he had survived it, he knew that he was
in trouble.
Yeah, it would be terrible. The remaining brothers soon found themselves in prison, leaving Kate on her own. It is believed George Barker left during this time as well. The reasons are unclear. Some say the criminal life became intolerable. Others say that his son's death and imprisonment of his other sons, he gave up completely and removed himself from the scene. Still others would say that he and Kate argued about their sons' criminal lives. Kate could see nothing wrong with the boys, while George could do so no longer. Alone with her sons in jail and her husband, Ma lived in miserable poverty in a dirt floor shack from 1928 through to 1931. Rumours say she became loose with other men, and by 1930 was living with a jobless man named Arthur W. Dunlop. Oh, he could have been Dunlop Tires. Sorry.
No advertising, please.
Yeah, true. Things further improved after Fred was released from jail in 1931. Fred joined forces. He did not join the forces. He joined forces with a former inmate, Alvin Karpis, to form the Barker Karpis gang. After a series of robberies and the murder of a sheriff in Missouri, the gang fled to the territory. Ma and her lover with them used various false names during this period, and to the gang became known as Kate. Sorry about that. Isn't that terrible?
It was a warm summer evening in 1933 when William A. Ham Jr., president of the Theodore Ham Brewing Company, was working at his office in St. Paul, Minnesota. He had just exited the building when he was grabbed by 4 shadowy figures and pushed into the back of a car. What he didn't know was that he had been kidnapped by members of the Barker Carpers gang for a ransom of over $100,000. Ham was taken to,
It'd been a lot in today's money.
Yeah, not much really, $100,000.
No, not to risk your life over.
But Ham was taken to Wisconsin, where he was forced to sign 4 ransom notes. Then he was moved to a hideout in Bensonville, Illinois, where he was held prisoner until the kidnappers had been paid. Once the money was handed over, Ham was released near Wyoming, Minnesota. The plan was perfect and almost went off without a hitch.
On September 6, in 1933, using a then state-of-the-art technology now called latent fingerprint identification, the FBI laboratories raised incriminating fingerprints from a surface that couldn't be dusted for prints. Okay, so they also got it from an area they thought they couldn't get the prints off, but they did get them. Alvin Karpis, Doc Barker, Charles Fitzgerald, and the other members of the gang had gotten away, but they left their fingerprints behind all over the ransom notes. They wouldn't do that today. They'd be a lot more careful.
I don't know, they still get caught, so, you know.
Well, they do. Yeah. You can never be 100% sure. So it just describes that the silver nitrate method and its application in the Ham kidnapping was the first time it had been used successfully to extract latent fingerprints from forensic evidence. Scientists had just thought to take advantage of the fact, here's what she knows, that unseen fingerprints contained perspiration, chock full of sodium chloride, common on the salt table. By painting the
table salt.
Yeah, it's the salt
from your fingers.
Yeah. By painting the evidence, in this case the ransom notes with the silver nitrate solution, salty perspiration reacted chemically to form silver chloride, which is white and visible to the naked eye. They were hard evidence that the Karpis gang was behind the kidnapping.
The second kidnapping that the Barker Karpis gang targeted a wealthy banker named Edward George Bremer Jr. They're all juniors. Yeah. Who was snatched in St. Paul, Minnesota on January 17th, 1934. Bremer was released 3 weeks later after his family paid $200,000 in ransom. Although he couldn't identify the culprits, Bremer provided many clues. A key break came when the fingerprint of Arthur Doc Barker, a known criminal, turned up on the empty gas can found by a local police officer along the kidnapping route. Soon, a number of Barker's Confederates, including his brother Fred Karpis, Harry Campbell, Fred Goetz. I've heard that name before, Fred Goetz.
Yeah, it's familiar.
Russell Gibson, Volney Davis, and others were linked to the crime.
In 1932, Arthur was released from prison and joined Fred and Karpis along with other criminal associates in the gang. They moved to Chicago. Well, we all know about Chicago back in that day, but decides to leave, not wanting to work for Al Capone. St. Paul, Minnesota. Hang on, I've skipped something there. Okay. They moved to Chicago and decided to leave, not wanting to work for Al Capone. St. Paul, Minnesota, and a reputation as being a haven. I think I've got to break. Sorry, guys. For
They
wanting
decided to leave because they didn't want to work for Al Capone.
Yeah, then St. Paul, Minnesota had the reputation as being a haven for wanted criminals. And this is where the most infamous criminals were committed. Crimes were committed. They operated under the protection of the city's corrupt police chief, Thomas Big Tom Brown, and from him transitioned from robbery to kidnappers. The gang believed Ma's lover and was loose-lipped when he was drunk, and had given up their identity, murdered him, and managed to escape. I think that's right. From St. Paul to Wisconsin. Fred moved his mother frequently to hotels and hideouts to keep her from learning of all their crimes. They also didn't want her interfering in their relationships with women. Ma was known to be very harsh with other women in the gang, and they were wise to steer clear of her.
By 1933, back in St. Paul, the gang pulled off 2 more kidnappings of wealthy local businessmen. The first kidnapping was that of William Ham, Jr. Wow. And that earned them a ransom of $100,000. With inflation today, it would have the same buying power of over more than $1.8 million. They later kidnapped Edward Bremer and netted $200,000 ransom, which would be, in today's money, $3.7 million. Okay, it was worth doing.
So it feels like those 2 are the main kidnappings that seem to have really pushed them into the FBI's eyes to see what these guys are doing. Because I don't know if they made any more. Might tell us as we go on.
So they're the same ones we were talking about.
We were just talking, yeah, it just tells you and just saying how much that money is actually worth by today's standards.
And then they talk about the latent fingerprints.
Yeah.
Ma Barker's house was discovered after Arthur, Doc Barker, was arrested in January 1935. They found a map indicating Ma, Fred, and the rest of the gang were at a hideout in Ocklawaha, Florida. We just say Florida. They found the location with the help of Gator Joe, a famous alligator living in Lake Weir from 1930 to 1950. What?
I'm sorry, you're right. That's what it said. A famous alligator. Maybe that's what they called them.
It was referenced in the letter as Old Joe, where the FBI learned it was near the Barker hideout. Gator Joe lived 1/8 of a mile away from the Barker house, where Ma and Fred died in a 4-hour shootout, on record as the longest gun battle in FBI history.
Sorry about that. That was a real woohoo. I don't know. You're going to have to find about that famous gator.
I reckon so.
The gang split up after the Bremer kidnapping and began crisscrossing across over the country, some even fleeing to Cuba. 3 went as far as to undergo backroom plastic surgeries to conceal their fingerprints and identities. Others passed the ransom loop back and forth, looking for ways to launder the money, which I reckon would have been a real problem, that kind of money. In September 1934, Ma Barker and Campbell registered under fake names at the El Commodore Hotel in Miami. Joining them was Fred's mother, Kate Ma Barker, who was known to help her criminal sons. When Fred asked for a quiet place to live, the hotel manager told him of a friend's cottage for rent in the nearby Lake Weir. The Barkers moved there in November.
It was December when Doc Barker was tracked down by the Bureau investigators. He was in a home in Chicago. On January the 8th, Doc was arrested without incident. Later that night, several associates of Russell Gibson were also apprehended. Heavily armed and wearing a bulletproof vest, Gibson tried to fight it out, but was mortally wounded. Searching the apartment, agents found powerful firearms, loads of ammunition, and tellingly, a map of Florida, with Lake Weir circled. Ancient agents soon located the cottage. Hang on, I'll put my teeth back in.
Hey, it's early morning,
Agents
Avery.
soon located the cottage hideout.
Hey, X marks the spot. He should have just tattooed it on his forehead. There they are.
There.
Shortly after 5 a.m. on January 16th, 1935, a group of agents led by Earl Connolly surrounded the house and demanded the Barkers surrender. No response. He waited 15 minutes, called again. Again, no answer. Following another call for surrender and more silence, agents shot some tear gas grenades in the windows of the house. Someone in the house shouted, "All right, go ahead." Their machine gun fire blasted from the upstairs window. The agents responded with a volley of their own. More gunfire erupted from the house. Over the next hour, intermittent shots came from the home and agents returned fire. By 10:30, all firing had stopped. Both Ma and Fred, it was soon learned, were dead. You know, when I think about, sorry.
No, go on.
I was just going to say, when I think about, yeah, I know it's only in movies where you saw the death of Bonnie and Clyde. It's always in a big deluge of firing, shooting. You know, it was never a half-hearted thing. It was like just blow them. I suppose they're just such big criminals. How do you, especially in them days, how do you work with it? You know what I mean? It must have been.
Well, I
You
mean,
just got to hit the hell out of it.
some like that dude who shot himself. Some went quietly, quickly, whatever.
Yeah.
Others, and I mean, at the end of the day, when you're in a house and you're having a big gunfight with the FBI outside, there is only one result.
No.
There is no other result. So it's probably suicidal intent.
Death by cop, isn't it? It's death by multiple cops because no one's going to know whose bullet did what.
Yeah, it's
And they're
death
not gonna
by
worry.
police. Yeah, I
Okay,
think
sorry about
anyway,
that.
because they prefer to die than hand themselves in.
Yeah.
Surely.
They've made the choice.
Yeah. Alvin Karpis, the brains of the gang, remained elusive. He had long led a life of crime. He was born in Montreal in 1907 under the name of, oh, that's a nice name, Karpovits. His parents, immigrants from Lithuania, later settled down in Kansas. And in 1926, he found himself serving 10 years in prison for burglary. He just found himself there. He didn't do the burglary.
Yeah.
He just found himself in jail.
I just, whoops, I'm in prison. I didn't go and do a crime. It wasn't me.
Following a jailbreak in 1930, he began his criminal career in earnest, often working with members of the Barker gang. A string of bank robberies, auto thefts, and even murder followed before the kidnappings of Ham and Bremer. And these things put him squarely on the FBI's radar.
In April 1936, Tennessee Senator Kenneth McKellar called Director J. Edgar Hoover on the carpet during. I just saw carpet and on the carpet. How does that work? During an appropriate hearing. I think that means campaign, on the campaign during an appropriate hearing. And that.
It's an appropriation on the carpet, so it's during an appropriations hearing.
Oh, okay. Right, yeah. Complaining about his request for more funds. When the senator challenged Hoover on how many arrests he had made personally, the director vowed to himself that he would be involved in the next big one. So when word came that Karpis had been located later that month, Hoover flew that night to New Orleans and joined the waiting raid team, which had staked out the criminal's apartment in Canal Street. The next day, May 1st, shortly after 5 p.m, Karpis and two others left the apartment and got in a Plymouth coupe. Hoover signalled his men who closed in. The director ordered Karpis to be cuffed. Ironically, no one had brought handcuffs. No
That's
one
not-
patron removed his tie and secured it around the hands of Alvin. The fish had been caught.
Within hours, Hoover was escorting Carpets back to St Paul, where he eventually pled guilty to the Ham kidnapping and was sentenced to life in prison. After stays in Alcatraz and other prisons, Carpus was paroled in the late 1960s.
Yeah, there you go.
So that's Ma Barker.
Yeah, and when I read that, but they mentioned other murders, but I didn't find any information about murders, and I'm wondering if that was the Carpus part of it that really got the other murders. All I remember seeing, yeah, robberies would have happened definitely, and obviously the two kidnappings. But it's mentioned that she'd been part of murders. The gang had been part of murders and stuff. But I know when I was looking up some information on this, I couldn't find anything that said related to murders on their side of things. So
Yeah.
unless Carpus was the one that was doing that.
Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, then. Well,
I don't know if you guys are interested, but Carpus actually died about, I think it was in the 1980s. And he'd been found shot, and no one knows it wasn't suicide. No one knows who did it.
Another mystery.
Conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
I read that.
Okay, then. Thank you very much for being a part of this, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Don't forget
I'm not
to
sure-
like and subscribe.
Definitely subscribe, guys. We want a few names now. Got a few up there, but these will take time. There's more to come. Do you know who we're following next? What you'd like to go through to next?
Kenny. Nurse
Who?
Kenny. Sister Kenny.
Sister Kenny. Okay, well that'll be an interesting. Is that science, Denise? Or
Yeah.
science? Her life was a science.
She's an Australian, not so well known, who became a nurse.
Okay, so we've done a few Americans
and
now.
she did wait for the.
I won't tell everything yet. Yeah, I just wondered if you knew. And let's face it, it's not set in cement.
Not set in stone.
Whatever. No, they're not laying with the fishes in the cement or in the water.
No.
Okay, guys, thank you for listening, and we'll sure see you all next time round.
Catch
Thank
on
you
the
for your
flip side.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.